Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the very first virtual funeral unconference. I have some special guests today. We're going to be talking on a number of different topics and make this very casual. If you have questions, please throw the questions into the Zoom chat. And also we are streaming live on Facebook. So if you have questions and you want to ask those questions via Facebook, please do that. We will try to answer them in real time. If not, each panelist will be able to go on demand and answer those questions that appear on the Facebook Live. So first, let's have everyone just give a quick introduction to themselves, and we'll go Jay, Gary, Justin, John, and then Paul. So Jay, give us a quick introduction.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jay Dodds, Chief Operating Officer at Park Lawn and also the President of the ICCFA. And I want to be the first one to say, congratulations, Ryan, on doing something unconventional.
Thank you.
So I wanted to be the first one to throw that out there because I know there'll be several doing that. So good morning, everyone.
Gary?
Hi, I'm Gary Freitag, CEO of Spring Grove Cemetery and Arboretum, and I'm the president-elect of ICCFA.
Justin?
Hi, I'm Justin Crow. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Parting Stone. We developed a technology that offers families an alternative to cremated remains.
Very good. John?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Here in Utah, John LaFront, CEO and co-founder of the Domani Group and the last year's KIP Award winner Domani Care Program, text message-based aftercare program out here in Utah. And we're excited to be here. Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you, John. All right, Paul.
Thank you. Paul Lemasters. I have a little company, Lemasters Consulting. I'm a funeral director, embalmer, also an attorney, kind of working only in death care to help people out. And then I also serve as general counsel for the ICCFA. And I'm glad Jay stole the only available joke for the entire 1 hour program. Well done.
Good job, Jay. Good job. All right, I'm Ryan Thogmartin, CEO of Disrupt Media and ConnectingDirectors.com. And I'm excited that we're able to pull together such a great group of presenters over the next 3 days and panelists to really kind of bring some of that convention feel that we're missing from the ICCFA to make it available virtual, where we can all have a conversation and still learn and have a pulse on what's happening in a profession that right now is, as Jay alluded to in our previous discussions offline, changing every single day. So Jay, I'm gonna go ahead and start with you and let's just talk about this. How did canceling the ICCFA convention take place?
Well, Ryan, that was a tough one. Several weeks before the convention, when the COVID-19 virus first started to hit the news big time in the US, we began discussing contingency plans. As the days went by, it became apparent to us that the virus was going to be a problem. So we started to talk about some triggers. What would be events that would take place that would give us clear direction of going ahead and canceling the event or postponing it or making some changes? A couple triggers that we had considered were company travel bans, some San Antonio public health announcements, as well as the communications with our exhibitors and some of the inquiries that they were making. Obviously, as we progressed over the following few days, the cancellation of the convention was triggered and we made the decision.
Well, I mean, there's so many details that go around, obviously, planning a conference of that size. How has everyone adjusted to that?
Well, our annual convention is the main event for the year, and it's used for networking, vendor interface, educational opportunities for our members, and the ICCFA staff works very hard in making a convention come off as seamless as they do. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, canceling one creates as many details. So quite frankly, they've been so busy, I don't think they've stopped to really think about it at this point. We did make the announcement of the cancellation far enough in advance where most of the vendors could halt shipments of products and displays. And then our members, attendees, they were able to cancel some travel plans as well as their hotel plans.
Yeah. I mean, how have people reacted to the decision? I know the supplier side, obviously we were disappointed, but completely understood.
Well, and quite frankly, I was very disappointed, as it was, you know, my year-end convention. And, but, you know, most people were disappointed, but they fully understand the reason behind the decision. We heard from many attendees, exhibitors, and members directly after the announcement, and not one person said it was the wrong decision. As time has proven, it was the correct decision.
That's right. That's right. I mean, so canceling an event of this size, has there been a financial impact to the association?
Well, you know, obviously this is the largest event that we have for the year, and there will be a financial impact to the association. But because of the leadership we've had in the past, we have contingency plans, financial contingency plans that could deal with a catastrophe like this. And we will get through this and continue to serve our members at the level that they expect.
That's good. That's good. So leadership, what's going to happen with the leadership and committees that were in place this year for this conference?
Well, we're currently discussing this at a board level, you know, what our options could be. We normally have a transitional board meeting and a handing over ceremony during the spring convention, and Gary has the opportunity to accept the new role, and I have the opportunity of getting my gavel and plaque and becoming a past president, which, you know, everybody that's been a president loves being a past president. So due to the pandemic, we do not want to really add a telephonic board meeting right now because people are busy dealing with their business. So to date, we have not scheduled a transitional board meeting. So for continuity's sake, we will continue with the same leadership for the near future. We should have some clarity on this subject very soon.
Okay, so we're all looking forward now, obviously, then to next year's ICCFA convention, and where's that going to be held?
Well, the ICCFA 2021 annual convention will be held March 24th to the 27th at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. Hopefully
Excellent.
this crisis will be behind us and the economy will have mostly recovered by that point. You know, we're all hoping for that. We look forward to a well-attended and successful convention next year. We also will be very excited to see all of those people that we were not able to see this year in San Antonio.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, this is kind of like a reunion of sorts. I mean, we all get together a couple of times a year and get to have these conversations and the handshakes and the high fives that, you know, we don't see each other very often throughout the year. So that definitely is something that we'll all miss. All right, you operate one of the largest companies in the profession. What's kind of the mood been with your organization and the messaging you've shared at Park Lawn?
Well, it's been very interesting, as it well has been for everyone. And Park Lawn has been communicating through its organization multiple times a day. We feel that over communication at this point is the best to make sure information continues to flow. Because it's one thing to communicate to the next person near you, but it's also a challenge to keep communicating to everyone, you know, throughout the organization.
Sure.
We're serving many families every day and continue to be as proactive as possible. We continue to see families at need and pre-need via Teams, Zoom, FaceTime. We're also continuing seminars in Teams and Zoom as well. Our funeral home and cemeteries are still providing services, whether it be to small groups of 10 or fewer, you know, mandated, or using webcasting, FaceTime, video, any medium that we can in order to help people grieve with the community and you know, distant families. In addition, we're addressing the calendar for future services and different ways we can serve. Our focus hasn't been on what we can't do, but rather on what we can do. And you know, we try to keep everybody positive and move in that direction.
It's fantastic. All right, any final comments, Jay, that you want to mention before we move on?
Well, I have two things. Number one, as with all disasters our profession has faced, we step up and keep our focus on the family and how we serve the community. As a funeral director myself, I've made first calls in blizzards. I've made first calls when tornadoes were coming, And, living in Houston, we've made first call in floods. So unless locusts are the next thing, we've dealt with a lot of this coming forward. And even though we're in uncharted water, we're funeral directors, and the funeral and cemetery professionals sign when chaos reigns, mainly because we have no choice. So that's number one. Number two is, since I'm not seeing you at the convention, Ryan,
Yes.
right here, high five, right here.
There it is. I love it. I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Jay, so much for sharing the kind of how ICCFA made the decision and what's transpired since. I want to kind of move on now to Gary to talk more about the association and how you're supporting members during this time. I mean, this is I'm not going to say unprecedented times, because the profession has been through viruses and some things before, but this is at a much larger scale, it seems like, and a lot of firsts. So obviously certainly trying times for all of us, but how has ICCFA tried to reach out and help the members of your association?
Well, you're right, Ryan. This is uncharted territory for sure. ICCFA has always been committed to help our members thrive over time. And there's two parts to it. Now, you've got the short-term crisis management aspect of the COVID crisis, but then we're hoping that we can help our membership thrive over the long term. And from a long-term perspective, ICCFA has promoted information sharing and best practices from the beginning. And there are really three main categories of that. There's public education, there's government relations, and then there's member education.
So let's talk a little bit about public education. Tell me about that.
Well, in our industry, consumers are basically ignorant of their choices. It's not that's not a criticism. It's no one wants to go online and shop for the goods and services we provide, right? It's a good or service everybody has to buy, but nobody really wants to. So we try to educate consumers. We get out information on the value of memorialization, on the value of remembrance and permanent placement, the value of prearrangement. And then occasionally we have to respond to media reports we find that are misleading to about the industry.
Mm-hmm. So how is ICCFA working with the government agencies during this?
Well, in a variety of different ways. This particular industry, I've been in many other industries. The regulation of this industry is really a potential minefield for members. You've got federal oversight, but a whole bunch of different individual state agencies that also have a large impact. So somebody like, we only operate in 1 or 2 states. Somebody like Jay that's operating in a ton of them, that's really gets to be a complicated issue. ICCFA monitors the federal and state legislation as well as the courts. We're trying to keep our membership up to date on the issues that affect the industry, but also affect small business in general. We're working on preparing, I know Paul's taken a leadership role in this aspect. We're preparing comments on the FTC review of the funeral rule. And we've actually, because of the crisis, asked for an extension, easy for me to say. I would say most importantly, we've developed model legislative and regulatory guidelines that we distribute to state organizations. That helps promote legislation that tries to balance the needs of businesses along with consumers. Occasionally, we provide testimony before congressional committees and federal agencies, and every once in a while, a friend of the court brief in support of members' interests.
Excellent. You mentioned member education. ICCFA is really known for their member education, isn't it?
It really is. I believe ICCFA offers the best educational programming in the industry, both in the number and the quality of what we provide. There are 4 main events. The ICCFA University, which is nearest to my heart. I happen to be one of the deans in the U. That takes place at the end of July. This year it'll be hopefully the 17th through the 22nd of July. And we have a new venue. We're actually going to Emory University in Atlanta. It's a 5-day program. It's intense instruction and tremendous networking opportunities. I always leave there with a couple of new friends scattered around North and South America, to tell you the truth. It's all done in a campus setting, so it's a little less formal. You can go just 1 or 2 years, or if you go for the whole 4, you become an ICCFA graduate. And our our attendance there has really gone up thanks to the ICCFA Educational Foundation, which provides 100 scholarships each year for needy students. In addition to that, we have the Executive Leadership Summit, which used to be called the Fall Management Conference. It's the only conference that really focuses on the C-level, on issues that owners and CEOs, CFOs, people like that, chief operating officers face in our industry. This year, that'll be September 15th through 17th in Mountain Shadows Resort in Paradise Valley, Arizona, which is outside Scottsdale, I believe. We also have the Dead Talks, which used to be called the Wide World of Sales. It's really focused primarily on salespeople and sales managers. That'll be held next January 13th through 15th at Bally's in Las Vegas. And lastly would be the annual convention and expo that Jay touched on. Just to add to his comments, we are excited about this. Many of the exhibitors who planned on exhibiting in 2020 have already committed to 2021. And the 3 keynotes that we had engaged are also have committed to come back and speak at the 2021 convention. And so we're really looking forward to just a fantastic sort of rebound convention that hopefully will be one of our all-time best.
Yeah, let's hope so. All right. So that's obviously a pretty impressive lineup of events throughout the year. Is there anything else available to members?
Oh, absolutely. ICC offers, real specific training classes, classes on cremation, celebrant training, ranger training, even programs to handle telephone inquiries. And for those who don't wish to travel or don't have the time to do that, we publish the ICCFA magazine. It's published 10 times a year, offers practical articles on how-to, case studies, commentary contributed directly by our membership, and obviously coverage of federal legislative and regulatory guidelines. And then we also have a bi-weekly e-newsletter. It's exclusively for ICCFA members, and that's just timely updates on legislative, industry, and association news.
Excellent. All right, Gary, you run Spring Grove, which is a large, high-profile, independent cemetery and funeral operation. What's been most valuable to you during this pandemic?
That one's actually an easy one for me. For me, it's the networking. In my opinion, it's the most important benefit of ICCFA. This industry shares more than any other industry I'm aware of. And as I said, I've worked in several other ones. I'm currently a member of 4 different CEO groups, and most of the CEOs I met through ICCFA events. And that has been my online crisis management hotline from the beginning of this crisis. Every day, we're sharing ideas on how to react to government announcements, state legislative guidelines, recommendations from health organizations like the CDC, not to mention just dealing with the fears of our customers and our employees. That's a daily concern. And kind of together, we are able to much more rapidly come up a learning curve on problems, on issues, this whole evolving landscape. And we're sharing everything, policies we've put in place, announcements we've made to the public, announcements we've made to our employees, and even procedures that we or other funeral homes and cemeteries have implemented to react to this crisis. That part has been absolutely invaluable in this chaotic situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, I would agree with you. There's been so much sharing amongst the profession at large in multiple groups on Facebook, email chains, study groups. It's been like this profession really rallies together to help each other, which I think has been phenomenal. Even competing funeral homes that are each other's throat around the corner from each other have come together to share resources and help each other out, which I think is a testament just to how much this profession really cares about each other and about serving to the best of our abilities.
Absolutely.
Any final words, Gary? And then I've got a question I'm going to throw out to both you and Jay that came through.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, Jay sort of touched on this. I'm very proud of our profession, how we stood firm in the face of this challenge. It's been incredibly difficult. Our members remain committed to serving families in their time of need, despite risks to themselves and their families. So I couldn't be prouder of the industry and obviously my employees here at Spring Grove. They haven't wavered.
That's fantastic. All right. So the question that came through, and you guys can choose how you want to answer this. It's regarding commissioned employees. This funeral homeowner is asking how others are paying them if you have to shut down.
I can respond to it how we're doing. We have a minimum payment that all of our commissioned employees get every 2 weeks. We've maintained that, and we also have increased commissions on at-need sales to help the sales advisors get through this time period that we know we're going to do through the month of April, and then we'll have to adjust going forward. But sure. There are other organizations that have done similar things that the CEO group that I was talking about earlier, because they don't want to lose these people. They're critical to our operation.
Yeah, we're doing something very similar. Our commission salespeople are on what's called a 7I plan, which is similar to a draw, but not exactly like a draw. And during the next pay period, we're not charging back their reserve if they do not have enough sales to cover that draw. And but you know, most of our folks are still talking to people and Zooming people, and our sales, they're not, you know, appointments aren't where they used to be, and our sales aren't where they probably would have been, but they're not bad either. So people are still working, and you know, a lot of that's attitude, and if they think they can do it, they're continuing on doing it. So we have great sales counselors that truly understand what they're doing for people. It's more than just the commission, it's the mission.
Sure.
And they're working hard.
Yep. Excellent. We've got one more from Tammy that came through. How have you changed the way you meet with your families?
Well, at Parklawn, we're either meeting with 2 people at the funeral home, or we're meeting via Zoom, Teams. We do Microsoft Teams. So we're doing a lot of that. Probably 80% of our meetings with people are via either FaceTime or Teams.
Okay. So virtual.
We're doing similar things here at Spring Grove. I would say right now it's about half and half. Okay. It's about half want to do the in-person arrangement conference, and half can do it remotely.
Are you limiting the number of people that can come to an in-person arrangement?
Yes, we're limiting it to 2, just like Jay did, and right now we're limiting all services to immediate family only.
Yeah, and Ryan,
yes.
So far everybody has understood that.
Yep.
We're not being pushed back at all.
You know, it's interesting the amount of empathy that's being given right now on, you know, to funeral homes. Families obviously are in a tough position, but they understand there's nothing that the funeral home or cemetery can do about it. So I think there's a lot of empathy going both ways, which I think is good. And we've seen that a lot through the chats inside of Facebook on the pages that we manage. Families are understanding. That's good. Excellent. Well, Jay, thank you. Gary, thank you so much for speaking about the association and the convention and what's available to your members. We're going to move on to Mr. Paul Lemasters Consulting. Paul, thank you for being on.
Glad to be here.
All right. I'm going to get this one out of the way first. Is death care essential or not?
It's a good question, and I know a lot of people keep running around this, and there's been confusion. So yes, death care as a profession across the board, we've been deemed essential, but it's important to understand how it came about, so people make sure to keep an eye on it. The federal government on March 19th basically released a statement from Homeland Security, and in it they identified what they called a recommended essential, non-essential list. And in that, death care was identified, and it was great. There was a push between several associations to make sure that happened. But what's been interesting, and let's call it if you've never paid attention in civics class, now you can see how the government works. That was on the federal side. And the federal side, all they merely did was recommend that any state should implement this as well. So what ICCFA did was we released a letter, and we encourage anybody, you can get it off the site, you still may need this. And that letter said that based not only on the federal recommendation, but also we cited some other reasoning that every state, if and when they initiate any orders, and this was pre a lot of the shelter in place orders, we said to make sure you use language, and we identified exact language that these states or localities should implement. And in it, we made sure to include funeral homes, cemeteries, crematories, as well as any of businesses or professions that supply the death care profession. All encompassing to make sure that we don't run out of things and that everybody can continue to make sure we go forward. Most states have implemented that and followed it. There have been some odd ones out there. And again, federal recommends, state can institute, but we're also, and I think we're going to see more of this, we're going to start seeing cities that will choose to put their own order in place, not the state. So metropolitan, we saw this in Kansas City. Missouri didn't come out and say, here's our order, but Kansas City did. And actually that one did not include funerals, but they were able to go back and get it fixed, corrected. So that's the status. So right now, all essential.
Very good. How they weren't already, the profession wasn't already deemed essential kind of blows my mind.
Yeah.
Because my dry cleaners is deemed essential from the get. So I don't know how death care wasn't. All right. You already talked about this a little bit, but biggest, simplest question is, can we still have a funeral service?
Yes. And we can, and I know Gary and Jay both touched on this, and I think it's important of all the things is, yes, we can have services. Are they limited? Yes. And you really need to continue to follow, not only the federal guidance, but also what your state or local are implementing. We're starting, yesterday it was announced that we're going to have the social distancing until the end of April. A lot of state orders are going to come expire. So they're going to have to reissue or extend those. Probably at least that's what we're foreseeing. So again, you need to pay attention and know what you're allowed to do, where you are. Again, funerals at the cemetery gravesite, most of these are still allowed so long as you're meeting these limitations. But again, safety's the priority, not only of the families that you serve, but don't forget about your employees. There have been a couple articles, and nobody wants to read this right now. No one wants to think about this. But there are articles out there right now talking about how employers have to pay attention because this falls under OSHA. And that if you're putting employees in a dangerous situation, you can be responsible. And you got to be smart. And this communication with everybody is key to that.
Very good. All right. So technology is becoming a big part of the answer. What are you seeing?
So I see two big areas of electronic side. One is how we actually are making arrangements, and the other one is how we're doing the services. Do the arrangements first. The arrangements, it's been quite amazing. We've been thrust in technology. You were mentioning it before that you see us probably 5-6 years ahead in technology, basically forced upon us, and I don't disagree. Maybe 6 or 7 years. I might go a little higher number. Just kidding. But electronic signatures are a huge one. We're seeing funeral homes and cemeteries now making arrangements online, basically saying, not even online, they're not even to that level. It's email, it's on the phone, it's, we're going to, email you this contract or go online, PDF. We're seeing DocuSign making huge. And the question I get, the biggest one is, are electronic signatures allowed? Yes, they are allowed. The only state that I know of is New York does not allow the use of an electronic signature for cremation. However, I've talked to them directly. They're looking at that for this situation. So the idea is use these tools, but right now, make sure you still comply with laws. The one area that, and I know I'm working with Ohio right now, many states, when it comes to cremation, it requires the authorizing agent, their signature has to be witnessed. Well, if they're not in front of you, how do you witness it? It means you'd almost need a second signature from somebody else. Again, some states, I know Ohio for sure, we're trying to loosen that for right now so that we can make a good workaround. But signatures are good, electronics good. Just keep pushing through in any way that you can protect the families and the safety of your employees is important. The other technology side is the actual service. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and that's the streaming of these services. We're seeing a ton of people going to Facebook Live We see YouTube, and those are great platforms. The issue is funeral homes have started to see where their songs during the Facebook Live, certain songs are being muted out, and in worst case, they're actually being cut off.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody says, wait a second, I have a license. I should be allowed to do this. Here's the confusion. And we've already talked to BMI, we've talked to ASCAP, and I've even had communications through them with Facebook, YouTube. There are 2 licenses. We have 2 licenses. All associations have ability to give you a performance license and also a webcasting license. Now, those allow you to play music, but it's to play music on a platform you control. So that means at your location, that's how you play your songs, and then you can play it on your website. The issue is that we're having is people are using Facebook Live as a platform. Mm-hmm. We don't have permission with Facebook Live. Facebook Live has a separate contract called a recording license. We can't get that. It's astronomical. It's millions of dollars. And it's not that you just say, oh, I want it. Every basically think record label has a contract, and they say, I will allow you to play these songs or I won't. And most of them say, I won't. They don't want that music on Facebook. They have, deals with Spotify and all of these other, and they get paid. So Facebook, it's just automatic. They have algorithms and systems set up, technology that when certain songs hit, it mutes out and you're done. You cannot get around it through Facebook Live. So you have to understand that risk. What you can do, or there are platforms that you can embed on your own website, which is what the licenses were meant at the very beginning. Zoom, Skype, and then there are some specifically in death care. They have plug and play platforms that you can put into your website, and that will allow you to do basically whatever you want. But that's the way to do those.
Very good insight. I mean, there's been a ton of confusion, and I know we've had probably hundreds of conversations about this with all of our customers streaming live and trying to have services online. All right, so obviously protection and keeping, you mentioned employees safe. What can funeral service providers do to make sure they have all the resources to stay safe?
Yeah, so the big thing that funeral homes are going to they are facing or will continue to face is personal protection equipment. You see it on the news constantly. Hospitals, frontline, they can't even get a lot of this gear. Well, we're not going to jump ahead by any means. Now, being essential is one step. I'm going to give you a couple of things real quick. One, the federal route. In other words, how do you get this through federal? There's 2 different ways that are going on. They both kind of work in conjunction, but one is through the Department of Health Services. So there's a local DHS typically in every state, every locality. They should be working with, it's called ASPR, Assistant Secretary of Preparedness Response. They have access to the strategic national stockpile of all of these supplies. And if you work through your Department of Health and Services, your DHS, you should have some ability to get PPE. Again, it's flooded right now. This is hard. Yeah. The other federal way is through FEMA. FEMA works through the Emergency Operations Center. And basically, there's a local emergency operations center in every area, state, local level, and you can work through them same way and go through them to try to get some of these PPE. Again, it's a long list. Most states are already, you see it on the news, they can't get them, they can't, they're trying. So be patient. What I will tell people though, and first of all, those EOC links, you ran them in an article you did. We have them as well on ICCFA. So businesses should go there. The other thing though, 2 more things. One, local. Don't assume that your normal supplier doesn't have any PPE. We've talked to several suppliers and they said, look, we still have gowns, gloves, shoe covers, masks. No, those are tough. And what they've said is that if you continue to have orders from us over the years, we can continue right now to maintain those same orders. Obviously, they're worried about people that have never ordered, so there are some issues, but go to your local supplier. And the last thing is ICCFA again, we saw that this was going to be an issue. We put together a letter that you can download off of the site. It's a supplier letter. And what it allows you to do as a business, you can send it to a supplier and say, look, I am an essential business. I'm going to need these products. Please keep me high on your list so I have advanced notice and that I can get it. And that has worked. We've also made that available to the actual suppliers. They have given it to their distributors, and we've know from a couple of them that they've used this letter and they've actually been able to increase their order to supply to death care. So it's just going to take a concerted effort, and you're going to have to stay vigilant about getting your orders in.
All right. So the government recently just passed the CARES Act. Is there going to be any benefit in that for death care?
Possibly. You know, the double-edged sword is, you know, a lot of what's being put out there, they're trying to protect non-essential businesses, but there are some things in there that'll work for both. So we have an entire write-up on ICCFA. So you can go, you can download it. It's pretty in-depth. I'll give you a few of the big things. One, payroll tax. For companies, the payroll tax, that's the 6.some% that you pay for Social Security payroll. Anyway, that's the employer part. They're going to allow businesses to delay paying that. And then now it's a delay, meaning you have to track it. You have to pay it back by 2022. So that's one thing. They also have two different types of loans right now. There's a disaster management loan, which is basically you can go in, tell them how you've lost money, and you can build out a loan packet. You can get that. Or they also have a payroll loan that they've just rolled out in the CARES Act, which will allow you to get about 2.5 months of payroll. That is a huge one. The one thing for businesses to know, right now, you can only get one of those options. So you really need to investigate to see which one might help you more. The 2.5 months payroll, the way it is set up, it's an easier loan, a much quicker loan. It can be forgiven. There's a lot of pluses. And then the last thing, the tax deadline for businesses. This was separate, but it's good to know that got extended 90 days to July 15th. So those are the big things on the business side.
Excellent. All right. I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball here, and where do you think that we are headed? Like, what's next for death care around this COVID-19 pandemic?
So with the extension of the 30, so two things happened. Yeah, and as Jay said, this is a day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
So this is our ultimate prediction. Yesterday we saw a lot of announcements, and some of those announcements were we're going to extend social distancing for 30 days. Also, we heard from the federal government that we could see 100 to 200,000 deaths. I believe what we are going to see in death care, we have not been, if you watch the media, nobody's really talked about death care in the U.S. yet. It's all the front line, and that's fine. Nobody wants to think about this part of it. Everybody's like, why aren't we essential? You said that earlier. Nobody thinks we're not essential. Nobody wants to say, what about death care? We need to start planning. So that's why we're on the back burner. You know, we're the last line of defense. And I think what we're going to start to see, sadly, we will start becoming more into the mainstream media. I think states are going to start reissuing orders. I don't think funeral and death care will ever be non-essential, but if you look at what's happened in Italy, Spain, Great Britain, funerals themselves may start to become more non-essential, and we as a profession really have to be on top of it, make sure we have good options, maybe make sure we can handle it. And again, communication is key. We have really got to communicate with our families so that they know what they can do. I think we're going to start to really see a different side of this that we haven't seen yet, sadly. And it's going to take all death care providers, funeral, cemetery, and crematory, working together and communicating with families to keep them knowing what they can do and keeping what we do so critical through this.
Okay. Well, Paul, Thank you for, man, there's a ton of information there that you're unpacking. And how can people in the death care space get a kind of continual update on the changes that are happening? Is there a good source?
There's a ton out there. And look, obviously I'm working with ICCFA, but so many other people are putting out information. So look to your associations, look to your state, anything you find. ICCFA, they have a whole page. I know the one thing we are continuing to try to do is boil it down. For example, the CARES Act, it's huge. A lot of it is not going to apply. So we tried to boil it down to say, here's what could be best and good for death care. So we're trying to get you quick information, but you got to stay on it because unfortunately, again, as Jay had said earlier, it changes every day.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Okay, before we move on to Justin, and thank you, Paul, appreciate that. We've got a few questions. I think these are going to, again, be more directed to Gary and Jay. Jay, we'll throw this first one out at you. How are your firms handling walk-ins or families that have not understood the mandates?
We're really not experiencing a lot of that.
Okay.
We're educating, we're talking to them on the first call. With shelter in place, you don't have a lot of just random walk-ins like you do in a normal day-to-day. So, obviously I'm sure we have some of those and, a lot of those I won't hear about, but, 2 to 3 people is what we've limited to. And, some people sit in their car. If they bring 6 people, 3 will sit in their car, and people understand, if you're honest with them and upfront, we haven't really had a huge problem with that.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Next one is on pre-need. This person, they already use DocuSign, but has anyone implemented an online contract purchase process since kind of the shutdown has occurred? Nope.
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, we do, we'll send contracts out and then, have curbside pickup.
Okay.
Whatever we can do to have the family will curbside drop off.
Okay. We kind of touched on this one a little bit earlier, but we were off camera. So Noah says that their funeral home's still offering full services, but obviously following mandates on funeral sizes and things. But what are your thoughts on funeral homes telling families that they will only do direct cremation or direct burial on these cases?
Well, that's a little bit of a tough one for me because I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't want to judge somebody else. They can do whatever they want to, but we won't be doing that because in a care center, you see viruses and diseases and meningitis and different things on occasion all the time. So, as professionals, we do what we need to do and we're an agent for the family and I wouldn't agree with recommending to cremate, but as Paul said, this is a fluid thing that's happening, and we may come back out at some point in time and be mandated to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But at the current time, we haven't been, and I don't personally agree with that. But whatever someone wants to do, they can do.
Sure. Are you? Yeah.
Hey, just to touch on that too, because it's a question I've gotten a couple of times. It's kind of surprised me, but a couple of places have actually asked, are we allowed to refuse to embalm bodies at this point in time? And, this goes back to in the late 80s when HIV was really becoming these cases and hitting funeral homes. And there were some funeral homes that went down that road and said, we are not going to allow that, no embalming, and they refused. Out of that, a couple things happened. One, there was a lawsuit and the funeral home lost for prohibiting. And also there were some states that actually put on the books that you cannot refuse to serve a family or receive a body from any, some say tuberculosis, some say HIV. I caution funeral homes of that going down that road. Obviously, state mandate, that's going to control you, follow that. But without that, most are saying you are able to embalm, you're able to do everything. And if you're concerned, the only way I could ever see this is if somebody said, Paul, we don't have the equipment. We don't feel we have an area that we can be safe and protect. Then I will respect that. I would give you that. But understand this, that means you would have to stop embalming all bodies, all of them, because at that point, you don't know which bodies have COVID-19 or don't. So if you're going to make that stance of, hey, we're not safe, we don't feel we have the right equipment, we're running low, we can't do it, that's fine. But that means you would have to stop all embalmings across the board for all families. And the only other question I've seen directly on is are we allowed to ask a family if the person, the deceased, was either, died of or had COVID-19 coronavirus? And the answer is yes, you can. Matter of fact, in some states, it's been recommended you should be asking that question. So you are allowed to ask that. But again, otherwise, be very careful and make sure you follow any state mandate.
Excellent. Okay, two more. Tammy says that their firm has been experiencing a rise in cremation since kind of the situation started. Is that the same for both of you, Jay and Gary? No,
I have not seen that at this point.
Okay.
No, I haven't seen it either. I did want to make one quick comment on walk-in traffic. We have had no issues like Jay has with the funeral homes, but our cemetery is being overwhelmed with foot traffic. Last Sunday we had 2,000 cars come into Spring Grove Cemetery because some of the local parks are closed. Wow. And we're contemplating ways to try to limit that, because we actually had half a dozen women try to have a yoga class in the middle of the cemetery. I'm not making that up. So some of the craziness that goes on with people not respecting social distancing is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Has anyone experienced COVID-19 related death cases where funds were not available? If so, would you handle any differently than your standard procedures, looking at potential PR issues?
I'm not aware of that particular situation.
I'm not either.
Early to tell too.
Okay, and then one more, and we'll move on to Justin. Kenny, our good friend Kenny Howe says, "Is this not a chance for funeral service to shine nationally and underscore the value of what we do?"
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I would agree.
We are in the forefront, and hopefully what Paul was talking about the media looking at what we do, hopefully it'll come off in a positive light, the services that we've provided through the crisis.
Excellent. All right, let's move on. Thank you, gentlemen. Justin Crow. So Justin, I'll give you a second to introduce yourself, but you are, or would have been, well, I shouldn't say would have been, you are the 2020 KIP Award winner from ICCFA, and the KIP Award they give out annually at the annual conference. So give us a quick introduction to yourself and your company.
Yeah, so I'm Justin Crow, founder, CEO of Parting Stone. What we've done over the last few years is develop the first ever alternative to cremated remains, and I'll show you here. So instead of receiving a family receiving a bag of cremated remains, they can receive a bag of solidified remains. It's the full amount of remains in a solid and clean form that looks like this. And we launched in October. We're being the ICCFA KIP Award winner has had a huge impact. So thank you so much, Jay and Gary. We brought on over 160 new rooftops since or as a result of winning the KIP Award. So that's been a really big deal for us. And we currently work with about 280 funeral homes. And, you know, related to COVID-19, we've been getting a lot of calls this week from funeral directors saying that we're not doing services anymore. We're looking for ways to increase revenue, and we've actually brought on quite a few new funeral homes that are using that method as well.
Excellent. All right. Love it. So I'm going to start with this question. Do people actually want an alternative to ashes?
Yeah, so, you know, that's been a really fascinating thing to explore over the last few years. You know, we developed this alternative called Solidified Remains with Los Alamos National Laboratory and material scientists there. But in the beginning, we hadn't actually proven that anyone wanted an alternative. And we worked for about a year with Cremation Society of Illinois, and in particular Don Fritz there, who really believed that his family did want an alternative. He was tired of the remains ending up in closets, just like me. And, you know, we're now seeing in our partners, they're selling to be between 3 and 5% of every cremation family that walks in the door. There's a few funeral homes we work with that are currently selling to 8 to 10% of every family. And so what we're finding is people do want an alternative. Ashes are messy. And I remember 3 years ago talking to Jay saying that ashes are inconvenient. And that has been the premise of this business for the last 3 years. And having remains in a form that's touchable and holdable, something you can embrace, really is allowing families to feel a meaningful connection with these remains. And we're completely shifting the relationship that people have with them from one that was pretty alienating and solitary to one that's very intimate and community oriented. The number one thing people do with these remains, the solidified remains, is share them with all their friends and family.
I love it. I love it. And we actually had one of our employees use parting stone for a pet, and got those stones
Vox.
back, and it was yeah, Vox. So that was really cool. And Justin, you're getting some love on here too. So this is a game changer. We're 50% of our families are choosing parting stone. So very cool.
Wow.
All right. Next question. What impact is this having on your funeral home partners? And we're seeing here that through the comments on Facebook that it's having a great impact, at least from these individuals.
Yeah. So the impact is, there's kind of a couple of ways to measure this. There's 3 kind of procedural things that have changed that we've seen with our partners. One is that there's a new question in the arrangement, and this is offered. This is not a product. This is just remains, but in a solid form. It's a new option. It's offered in the beginning of the arrangement. The family chooses cremation. Funeral director says we have 2 options for receiving remains: cremated remains or solidified remains. And we offer a display that has a jar of ash and a box of the solidified remains, and the family gets to choose how they'd like to receive that after the cremation. So that's one big change, is just that question. Number 2, we've had multiple funeral homes add this question to their authorization form. Those are some of our most successful partners that we have. It's just a question: how do you want to receive the remains? Checkbox. Cremated remains, checkbox. Solidified remains. And then from an impact standpoint, like I said, between 3 and 5% of families that walk in the door choosing solidified remains, they wholesale for $395, retail for $595. All of our funeral home partners are making a $200 profit, pure profit margin on every single sale. And we have multiple partners right now on track to increase profits by $20,000 this year just through using our service.
That's pretty cool. And we've got a viewer, Steven, who said that he put a poll on their Facebook page asking their community before they began offering parting stones about the idea, and 99% of respondents indicated they would prefer parting stones over ashes. Interesting. Okay. And then what types of families are choosing solidified remains?
That's a great question. Yeah, we've seen a few customer segments emerge pretty strong over the last about 6 months. 4 in particular. One is families who are planning to scatter. So the joke in the office is that solidified remains is ruining all pop culture cremated remains disaster jokes. You no longer have to worry about wind. You don't have to worry about them spreading out on top of water when you scatter. It's just, it totally shifts that ritual to something really elegant. So scattering families are a big one. Another one is families planning to share. Everyone's had the experience where the family brings in 27 tiny bags and you spoon the remains in 27 tiny bags. That never has to happen again. The number one thing people do is share these with friends and family. We worked actually with a terminally ill woman who heard about our service, decided she wanted solidified remains for herself, planned her entire memorial around this so that she had 30 friends come to this memorial. Each one got to take home one of her stone-like remains. It was really beautiful. Environmentally conscious families are choosing this. We have the largest ever study underway with Los Alamos National Labs right now into the environmental impact of scattering cremated remains. What we're finding is that cremated remains, when scattered, have a fast and intense impact on the environment because of their high pH level. Solidified remains are very gentle and over a much longer period of time. And then travelers is the last one. Obvious reason, you don't have to worry about them spilling in luggage. And number two, when you travel with cremated remains, because they're a powder, they have to do the testing on the box, and then they do the chemical drip test. That can feel pretty invasive for families, but because solidified remains are not a powder, they don't have to do any of those tests when you move through TSA.
Awesome. We've got a couple questions that have come through, Justin, for you. For faith communities that do not allow the dividing of cremated remains, what options have you explored?
Yeah, so we have had those types of faiths, Catholics specifically, choose this option quite a bit. We haven't had any official stance from the Catholic Church on this, but it's the full amount of remains, and it stays together. So it should, from what I can see, follow the guidelines that they put forward. And we've also have one very successful funeral home that focuses on Jewish families, and there's a ritual in Judaism where you put a stone on the grave, and this is a very popular option within that community as well.
Excellent. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being on. Congratulations for being the 2020 KIP Award winner.
Thank you so much.
Really creating a category of disposition.
Absolutely.
Solidified remains is a new category. That's fantastic. So we've got a couple more questions that are COVID related that after John we will ask. So if Jay, Gary, Paul, if you guys could stay on, I think a couple of these will involve Paul as well. That would be greatly appreciated. So thank you, Justin. And moving on to my friend John LaFrant. John, thanks for being on. And you were the 2019 ICCFA KIP Award winner. Please introduce yourself again and your company.
Yeah, you bet. It's good to be here and to be with this great panel. I've learned a lot today, and certainly the thing I love is just the innovation that comes when we have challenging times, and it's really cool to get all of our heads together and see how we can keep moving the profession forward, but provide tremendous service for these families. And it's been fun, Ryan. I think it was ICCFA last year that you and I met.
Yes.
And had breakfast. And so, yeah, I miss the conference and miss going and shaking hands with so many great professionals at the conference, but it's good to be here at least virtually and continue to move things forward. So yeah, my name is John LaFrant. I'm the CEO and co-founder of the Domani Group. On April 1st, that'll be our 2-year anniversary as a company. But it was a little over a year ago that we launched our Domani Care platform, which is our text message-based aftercare program. And yeah, we won the ICCFA KIP Award last year. And just like Justin, for us, it absolutely propelled our growth and got us some fantastic exposure in the profession and kind of legitimized, our offering. And so huge fan of that award, and Justin, well-deserved. But yeah, our Domani Care program is a text message-based aftercare program. And my background and experience, as well as several of my team members, comes from the pre-need side of this business. And I've been in the profession for about a decade now. I initially got into the profession because of my personal experience with loss. When I was 25 years old, my father died of brain cancer, and I'm the oldest of 7 kids. And so being the oldest, I had to step in and help my mom plan the funeral. And I had a very limited exposure to the funeral profession and just funerals at large because of my young age. And, the funeral went great. And I think funerals all over the country and over the globe, go well. But I noticed that there was a big void and vacancy on the aftercare side of the business. And it was because, you have funeral directors are fantastic at helping guide a family from the time of death to that onset of grief, that window. They're terrific at it, but then the next funeral comes and they get so busy with that. And so as we experienced with my family, we had our funeral and then we were kind of just left to, well, what's next? And we had to enter this great abyss of the unknown. And that was incredibly daunting and frustrating as a young 25-year-old. And I was a new father and trying to navigate life. And so we knew that there was kind of this hole there. But my partner, Riley, and I, we both had experience with aftercare as a pre-need lead source. And so we had dialogued a lot with families, but we knew even beyond it being a pre-need lead source, there was still a tremendous need and a void there to continue to outreach to these families. And the other thing I'll just mention is that's been the case just with business as status quo. But ever since COVID-19, these last 2 weeks, as I've been talking to my team of live text message responders, these families, they need to be reached out to. The dialogue that we're having with them is much longer than normal, and it's because they're shut in their homes and they don't have people that they're able to talk to and that are checking in with them. And that's our responsibility, definitely, is to follow up with these families. And so what we do on a day in and day out basis, I think it was last month alone, we had dialogue with 15,000 grieving families across the country. And to be able to talk to them and help them and provide additional grief resources and check in and see how they're doing has been just such a phenomenal experience for us. And we're grateful that we have the opportunity to partner with our funeral home partners and funeral directors to reach out to these families. It's been very, very rewarding.
That's fantastic. And I was going to ask you, what do those conversations look like as families are kind of shut in and dealing with grief through the text message based program?
Yeah, so a couple of things I'd like to just highlight. Every single text message that we send out is sent by a live human and it's responded by a live human. We use technology to be able to do it en masse, but we have a team of 27 employees, all of which are working remote now, thankfully. We were able to easily transition to that. But these live text monitors, they are there, they're on staff, and they dialogue with these families all throughout the day. Our very first message is still the same as it always has been. We check in with the families about a week to 2 weeks after the service. It's always customizable to what your preference is at the funeral home. But we reach out to them and we just check in and see how they're doing. That we know that these first weeks can be very, very challenging for them. And it's amazing. We see about a 50% response rate from our text message program. And families just start dialoguing. And our team is highly skilled in this. I mean, they do this on a day in, day out basis, and they're there to listen. Sometimes we have them send in pictures of home improvement projects that they're doing to keep themselves busy. Sometimes they want to just share memories and experiences. And for us, it's not about getting a sale with them, right? This is all about just being there and caring for them. We give full transcripts of all of our dialogue and our conversation to the funeral home so they can see this tremendous work that we're doing on their behalf as a member or an extension of their team. But yeah, it goes all different ways. And we see, as grief does, and especially during this COVID-19, it's different, but we're there to be a listening ear and to provide help and support wherever necessary. Anytime we feel like it needs to be escalated, we definitely escalate that to the funeral home owner or the funeral directors when needed, and we have a way of escalating that very quickly. Text messaging is just such a powerful medium. Our profession for many, many years has utilized direct mail, where you're lucky to get a 1.5% response rate. We've tried email campaigns, and even phone calls are terrific if you can get a hold of people, but we have gotten in this habit of screening phone calls and letting it go to voicemail. But text messages is there. So if we're already seeing a 50% response rate, we know that there still is, within that other 50%, they're still getting the message and they know that you care about them and that you just want to make sure that they're doing okay.
I love it. And, one of the reasons you and I vibed so well when we met was, what we're doing on the social side of building that relationship prior to the consumer needing the services of the funeral home. You're continuing that relationship ongoing, and there's a great kind of mesh there and synergy. But okay, so since ICCFA last year, you've rolled out a couple other services as well that have been pretty powerful, and we actually use one of your services on the appointment setting side, which I know there's been some questions on here about pre-need and meeting with families. How have you been using, your guys' service with appointment setting during this time with funeral homes?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I kind of spent most of my time talking about Domani Care, our text message, aftercare program. The other side of our business is pre-need appointment setting done over the phone. And so we have a team of callers. Again, they're all remote. And that is where a lot of our background is. I managed teams of appointment setters in the profession for many years with the company I was with previously, and have an extensive background and experience in that appointment setting side of this business. And so we appointment set for funeral homes and cemeteries also all across the country. And it's been interesting to see the initial response these last 2 weeks on what each individual funeral home is doing. We're able to customize that approach, obviously, to whatever works for the funeral home. So some solutions that I know our funeral home partners are using, I've seen tremendous praise for the eFuneral platform. If you're familiar with that, from a pre-need standpoint, I think that what they have is pretty sophisticated and certainly ties in with the insurance product. A lot of people are obviously using the social distancing guidelines. Some are still meeting with families as long as they're abiding by those guidelines. A lot of people are taking it to Zoom and are doing phone-based appointments. And so we adapt to any solution that you use based on what alternatives that you have out there. We're definitely exploring ways that we can enhance this. I think that we're learning a lot. To your point earlier, Ryan, I think you had mentioned that this technology boom that we're seeing through COVID-19 is actually moving this profession forward probably 5 or 6 years. So we're all of a sudden going at this accelerated rate saying, all right, what technology solutions are there available to us and how can we use them to get these solutions to these families? And we're learning that, and we're kind of seeing a pulse of everything that's happening in the profession, what's working, what's not. But appointment setting still remains. I mean, people still, in fact, we're seeing with some of our partners that they're seeing high responses to their various marketing efforts because people are, again, shut into their homes. And so it might be that we see higher direct mail return rates, so that we're seeing more dialogue and engagement through our Facebook platforms or online submissions, et cetera, because people are now thinking about their mortality in a totally different light. It's the unfortunate part of this, but it's a reality. We always should be thinking about our mortality, but now you just turn on the news and you have no choice but to think about your mortality, because every time you step outside the door, you could be exposing yourself to a deadly virus. So anyways, it's out there, but there are a lot of solutions that are there. We're innovating and exploring with those solutions. So the other things, kind of as you had mentioned, Ryan, I mean, we have a partnership with you on Domani for Grief as well as our appointment setting services, and we're able to provide Domani for Grief for all of your Disrupt Media clients, but all of our clients as well have that online grief support that they're able to do. We also have had announced recently some great strategic partnerships, one with Johnson Consulting Group, which I know you'll have them on, I think tomorrow or the next day, and using their performance tracker and the ability to also send out those follow-up surveys via text messaging, again, is just a phenomenal opportunity for us to be able to do that and to increase the engagement on those platforms and to pivot and to shift. And I think that's also what I love about this is at the Domani Group, we don't want to be every solution for every single problem, but we love partnering with other leaders like yourself in the profession and saying, hey, how can we help each other using our toolbox and our skills, and how can we help reach more families and help more funeral directors and funeral homeowners? It's just, that's what I love about this profession. It's been so awesome to have these relationships.
Absolutely. Love it. And so, okay, a couple questions have come through for you, John.
Sure.
I'll ask these to you. The unenrolled, so when people unenroll from text messages, what's that rate like? Is it a high rate of unenrollment, or do you see families stay in these chat conversations?
Yeah, very, very, very few unenroll. We occasionally get ones where people just don't respond at all, but the unenrollment rate is minute, less than 1%.
Love it. And okay, so you're a big stat guy, so I know you have a lot of data. Let's see. There was a question on here. how does open rates differ from an aftercare program via email to aftercare via text?
Yeah, great question. So we talked about direct mail response rates, 1 to 1.5%. Email, you see kind of in the profession about a 15% open rate on email. But direct mail, or excuse me, text messaging, I mentioned the response rate of 50%, but we know that that text message open rate or read rate is 98%. The vast majority are within the first 90 seconds of it being sent. And it's because we have, smartwatches and phones. It's the first alerts that we get. So you're actually getting a 98% read rate on text messages. Excellent.
Well, John, thank you so much for being on and sharing with us what your program's doing. Look, I can speak on it as an advocate. We use your appointment setting, and it's been extremely valuable for my team and just our efficiency with handling leads and my time spent handling leads. So thank you for that. Okay. A couple more questions. And Paul, this one is for you. Can you revisit the Facebook Live protocols, do's and don'ts?
So perfect world, you probably don't want to use it, but it's simple, it's easy. You're going to use it. You just got to communicate. Let families know that if there's any music, probably, and again, it's not all music, it's copyrighted, certain recordings. One song may be fine, another one might not. Let them know that it could be, faded out or muted. The chance it would drop. Ultimately, you probably want to try to move over to something else. And keep in mind, if there's no music or anything, so if it's a service and there won't be any songs, you can do whatever you want. That's perfectly fine. We're talking about just the songs itself.
Perfect. Okay, this question is from Sabrina, and it's more directed to Jay and Gary. Are any of your funeral homes or cemeteries doing grief meetings online? And are you calling past families to check in? Have you created more content around coping with loss that you've been sharing and during this time?
We have been doing that, and we're having quite a bit of success with not only our families, but some of our competitors' families as well, for those that, aren't offering anything like that. And we've done a lot of work with Alan Walfeld as well, and his assistance has been really great as well. And, just putting the program together to where it's, it has content and not just, just a place to meet.
We're very similar to that. We have a grief counselor, not an employee, an outside company that has gone to a digital meeting as opposed to a face-to-face meeting. But our sales advisors and funeral directors are following up and just doing it all digitally or via phone as opposed to in person.
Beautiful. Okay. Next question. Gary, for you, is your cemetery still offering cremation options in the cemetery, like cremation gardens, niches, benches? Is that still happening right now?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will do a pre-need appointment by appointment only with 2 people if somebody wants to do that. But in general, we're discouraging that. We're trying to meet with at-need families only. But yes, all the options are still available.
Okay. Next question is on registry books. Now that there's not kind of viewings and a gathering of people, Jay, have you guys shifted the way that you're doing registry books? Are you using digital books? How's that happening?
Well, in the beginning, we had an employee stand there that wiped the pen off, because, this was a short-term thing. As it turned into a longer-term thing, we'll either have the employee register the person.
Okay.
We haven't really went to a lot of electronic yet. So currently we're having an employee sign somebody's name.
Okay.
We're doing exactly the same thing.
That seems to be pretty standard. We had a funeral home that we made a couple posts that families could call in, and they were doing recordings. So they would put it on speakerphone, they would record a condolence, and then they were putting those all on a thumb drive that they were giving to families. So a lot of different variations of how we're trying to figure all this stuff out, right? Okay, I don't know if anyone can answer this question, but you may be able to. Does the COVID-19 virus die when the person dies?
I can. Here's what we know. It's all across the board. When it first came out, there were some preliminary statements that it did, or within a short amount of time. Now they're doing studies. It's one of the questions we're trying to get a solid answer for ICCFA to get it posted. Unfortunately, right now, it's changing every day, and there's people that say that there are studies showing it's still within 24 hours. There's some, the longest I've seen right now, say they live up to 9 days in a body. Now, the one thing, though, I think most that we've talked to agree that through embalming at a higher disinfectant rate with a higher solution, that is kind of the key right now. Delayed aspiration, things like that. But again, something for the profession that really they need to keep monitoring as these studies come out.
Very good. Okay, so this question's a little bit different. It's from a vault company, and they were burying a family member that had a family member that was present at the graveside that had COVID-19 symptoms and had been tested for the virus. What is advised in that situation? Are there legalities of not like removing that person or asking them to leave that come into play in that situation?
Well, what we found, Ryan, it is we don't usually know that till after the fact.
Yeah. Okay.
So, if it's something that we know ahead of time, we would ask the family not to have them attend. But it's usually something, we know 3 days later.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that's.
Yeah, I think the other thing, again, it's that communication. It's making sure everybody in the whole line, funeral home, cemetery, vault, everybody is aware of what's going on, that everybody knows social distancing. I know the NCBVA, National Concrete Burial Vault Association, they've put out some recommendations. And part of that is making sure that not only the cemeteries and funeral homes know, but the vault companies, that when they go, people know that we're not going to be coming close. We're going to make sure everybody leaves before we maybe lower grave and not be present. Tents are no longer really recommended. You don't want anything to confine people with under a tent, 6 feet you want, so give them room. So again, it's communication.
Excellent. And okay, so last question here, unless something else comes through. Is it safe for me to volunteer in hotspots? I don't know that anyone can answer that one. Like, I guess you take the recommended precautions if you're volunteering in some of the hotspots. Yeah.
And increase your risk of exposure. I think we all have a pretty high risk of exposure over the next 6 months, given the nature of the virus. But if you're going to volunteer in a hotspot, you're putting yourself in harm's way, and hopefully you're one of the people with the mild symptoms or immune to it.
Another one that just came through. How are you dealing with family members when serving a family where someone has died from COVID-19? How are you dealing with meeting those family members that could have been exposed to that individual while they were living?
Doing electronically.
Okay. It's going virtual, 100%.
Yeah, and the World Health Organization, and actually there's even a story not long ago, that's the greatest risk for death care that they face. It's not typically the deceased, it's those that would have been with that person. So if it's a COVID-19 death, you really have to take extra heightened precautions. And again, that family social distancing, virtual if at all possible. Possibly the arranger would need to be wearing PPE to meet that limited family. I mean, it's not what we normally would do, but there's a case in Spain that they were actually able to link almost 100 cases, all from one funeral. And it was from the funeral itself that they were able to track it back to. That's where we have to be vigilant.
Yeah. And Jay, just clarification, where you were talking about some of the things you're doing with the grief groups and reaching out to your families. You're not contacting your competitors' families, but you are reaching them because the grief support's not available through that funeral home?
Right. I mean, they're
Yeah.
contacting us and
Sure.
they're seeing it on our Facebook page and they're seeing it, they're seeing it through the community.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for one, being willing to be a part of this and spending almost an hour and a half today on the live stream. I know it's crazy busy time for all of you, so we appreciate the time. And I think this was historic, the first day of the first virtual funeral unconference. So really appreciate all of you. There will be a recording sent out to all that have registered each day. As soon as the recording is available through Zoom, that will be sent out. You can also watch the entire live stream on demand via the Connecting Directors Facebook page. As questions come through after the fact on the live on demand, we'll get those out to the right people and try to get answers back to those individuals. But the responses so far, gentlemen, have been fantastic. Thank you for your time. And this is historic.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks so
Buddy.
much for putting this all together.
Absolutely.
Ryan.
All right,
Thank
to
you,
our
you're
viewers,
awesome.
thank you. And we will be back tomorrow with Johnson Consulting, Live Oak Bank, and C&J Financial at 12 p.m. Eastern, again on Zoom and live streaming through Facebook. So see you tomorrow.